I'm going to start off this morning by putting a shape in your head. I want you to imagine a triangle. An equilateral triangle. Geometry department. Shout out. Give it a color. Give it some depth. Now I want you to imagine 3 words. God, others, self. 3 words, 1 triangle. We're going to come back to our triangle at the end, so keep that in mind. This month, our theme and what we're learning about is service, what it means to serve one another. But in order to better understand what that means, I want to add some perspective to the concept of service. Let's start with self. Did you know that taking care of yourself is in fact biblical? Just how biblical, though? In the 10 Commandments, God tells the Israelites to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now, what does that mean? What is a Sabbath? What is the Sabbath? It's a day. It's the Sabbath day. And it is a day of rest. And we're talking about serious business. Don't do anything because the creator of the universe told you to rest. Rest. Keep this day holy. Honor it. Respect it. Do it. Remember it. Rest is serious business to Jehovah. There's a reason it's in the 10 Commandments. We're going to come back to the 10 Commandments later. Now, since we're talking about serving one another, you should know that taking care of yourself allows you to better serve others. That's something you have in mind already. Taking care of yourself is important. Imagine you went to the doctor's office and you're waiting at the table and the doctor comes in and immediately they lean over the trash can and throw up. They get back up, look at you, they're sort of brushing off some of what came up, and then they reach over to touch your face, to just sort of examine you, maybe give you a check on your tonsils a little bit. No thanks. Gross. All right? Your physical health, emotional health, and your spiritual health matter. When I was in high school, everybody loves your teacher telling you about when they were in high school. When I was in high school, I played football. In my junior year, in our first game of the season, I got hurt. I went down, I got tackled weird, and I strained my Achilles tendon, and I had a high ankle sprain as well. So what would have been 3 weeks ended up being 6 weeks of recovery. But in that moment, I was hurt. But I stayed on the field. I was hurt and I stayed on the field. And because of that, the next play, I missed a block that I physically couldn't get to. And my running back got hit so hard, he had to go to the sidelines. Because I missed the block. I stayed on the field. And eventually I came off. And when I told my coach what happened, he was upset at me. He was mad that I stayed on the field. I was making things worse. I was making things worse for myself and the people I cared about, my own teammates. Teammates I was dedicated to, that I was committed to helping and fighting for. Make no mistake, it is good to pour out oneself for others in service. In Galatians chapter 6, the Apostle Paul writes to the church in Galatia, "Brothers, if someone is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual should restore him gently. But watch yourself, for you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Each one should test his own actions, then he can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else." Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, in their book, Boundaries, write about the difference in two words within these verses. The words burden and load. They contrast carry each other's burdens with each one should carry his own load. Because there's a difference there. A burden is something that is excess, something so heavy for us that we are weighed down by it. Death, divorce, addiction, sin. Burdens are like boulders. Someone say a prayer that stands up and stay standing. Burdens are heavy. They're difficult to handle on your own. Now, a load is more like cargo, or the daily work of everyday things we all need to do. Loads are like knapsacks. Okay? Now, in it, see what's in our knapsack. These are the daily things that we're responsible for. Okay, so we've got our behavior. Okay, we've got our behavior. Okay, we've got attitude. Okay, we're responsible for our own attitude. And our feelings. Okay, this is something we're responsible for, and no one else. It's a good thing to help carry boulders for one another, but problems arise when we mistake other people's knapsacks for boulders. We start to carry things we shouldn't. When you treat the way other people feel as your own boulder, you've got a problem. And so do they. This is a problem that leaves you weaker for when the time comes to do the real heavy lifting. And those times will come. Earlier in his letter to the church in Galatia, Paul writes, "You, my brothers, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love. The entire law is summed up in a single command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you keep on biting and devouring each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. Serve one another in love. Love your neighbor as yourself." Here we see the two concepts of others and self blend together seamlessly. But let me ask, if you don't love yourself, how can you love your neighbor as yourself? We have no love. How can we serve one another in love? We're called to love. We're called to serve. But what does that look like? I used to think that service meant sweating. If I wasn't sweating, I wasn't serving. And since I wasn't a big fan of sweating, I wasn't a big fan of serving. But then I realized something. Not everybody needs me to exert myself physically in order to serve them. Lots of people can be served by sweating. And you know what? Sometimes I'm going to sweat to serve the kingdom of God. Sometimes you got to burn calories for Jesus. You've got to get sweaty for God. I want to see that on a t-shirt someday. Get sweaty for God. That's going to be the ministry of service someday. I'm calling it. And that is a beautiful thing. What better reason could there be to sweat? But service shouldn't stop there. Now this is the part where I would dish out the top 10 list of practical ways you can serve your friends, teachers, siblings, and parents. Number 6 will shock you. Lists can be helpful sometimes. But I'm not going to do that. Because you see, there's too many of you. And every one of you is an individual with unique abilities. unique ways to serve and unique ways that you can be served. The combinations and ways we can all be served and serve is practically limitless. My charge to you is to be creative with your service. You can serve on an individual level, face-to-face, on a community level, class, school, youth group, family, on a global scale. Think of a way to change the world. If you think you're too small, you're right, but God's not. Okay, and why not? So why don't we start setting goals so big, success is only possible with God? Back to Paul. He says each one should test his own actions, then he can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. Remember, your Creator made you creative. Be who you are and serve just as you are. Now this next part's pretty cool, so I hope you're still with me. Think back to our triangle. On one corner we've got self, on the other we've got others. And now for the final corner, God. What does it mean to serve God? Well, the first part of this answer is simple, but a tad bit weighty. It's heavy. It's obedience. And obedience isn't a fun word. It's not fun because we almost always associate it in the negative. Don't do this. Don't do that. All those don'ts are super important. They're so important God came down and personally delivered them to Moses. I'm talking again about the 10 Commandments. Don't murder, don't steal, don't covet. But we should remember that God's love is interwoven within all of His commandments. How? In the same way a parent loves their child by warning them from wandering too close to the edge of a cliff or an open fire. The rules of our childhood sought to protect our physical bodies. The laws God gave Moses seek to protect your spiritual self. Sin hurts the soul like fire burns the flesh. We have to know that God's love is not passive, so ours shouldn't be either. In 1 John, it's written, "This is love for God, to obey His commands, and His commands are not burdensome. For everyone born of God overcomes the world." Know God's commands and keep God's commands. And this is the cool part. Just think about it. What is the greatest command God ever gave? Love Him with all your heart, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love one another as yourself. You are dismissed.